Yes. Hello and good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending on the location where you are, to all of you. My name is Alexandra, and I have the pleasure today to be the host of this webinar, dealing about hybrid tracking by using client and server-side tracking. You will learn in the next 45 minutes what other server-side tracking technologies have missed out and about the paradigm shift in data capture. Those topics will be presented by the two founders of Chantis, Klaus and Thomas. Let me welcome you also. And Thomas is the technical mastermind of the idea behind Chantis, and Klaus, a former Google manager, is giving his business experience and adding with that a great value to the whole solution. Before I'm going to hand over to both of them, let me tell you a few organizational things. As I wrote in the chat, if you have problems with your audio function, please make sure that you use Google Chrome as the latest version of your browser. If there is still a connectivity problem, please don't hesitate writing me an email. You will find the address in the chat functions. If you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat and type it in. We will care about them and deal with them at the end of the presentation in the questions and answer session. For the next 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I'm now wishing you very great insights of this really relevant topic. And I'm now handing over to Klaus and Thomas, who will also introduce themselves with a few words before we are going to start.
Thank you, Alex. So we're super excited about the second webinar today. We are just running a series of webinars. Last week was our first one, where we were super surprised about the response rate also for today. And great that you made it to watch out what the paradigm shift in hybrid tracking will bring to you. Thomas, do you want to start with the intro?
Sure. Hello to everyone. My name is Thomas. Originally, I'm a software developer and software architect, and at Chantis, I'm responsible for all the techie stuff like the product development, the product management, and a little bit the outlook and the market research. Klaus, over to you.
So I'm the oldie in the team, more than 23 years in the digital space, worked mainly with mobile operators in the early days, late 90s, and after the millennium, was also 4.5 years with Google. So I also know Google in and out, and this also helps, of course, to position our product here on the market. So Alex, I think, by the way, I'm doing all the commercial stuff here, marketing, sales, business development. Alex, I think we have prepared one question before we get started. So, we have prepared a question for you guys to help with the main motivation. What brought you to this webinar? What's the expectation? We'll take a few seconds until you all have given your vote on that.
Yes, and we see the vote is still going on. So please feel free, don't hesitate, and we will show you the results of the survey in a few seconds. Oh, there will be something more. Come on, guys. Don't be shy. Just to make sure, after you have keyed in or pressed the topics you want to see, make sure that you press the button at the end to transmit the results of your opinion. Great. So I think Klaus and Thomas, we will show the results now.
Please publish it. Slightly different than last week, but not a big difference, in fact. So is it published already?
Yes, it is.
But to be honest, from a point of view of a data statistic, we do not really have a winner.
Good. So slightly in advance is first-party integration, and the three other points are more or less equal. I would say not a big distinguished result on that.
But I think that shows how important all those topics are for our audience today. So yeah, I wish you to all of the topics great insights. And now, Klaus, start your screen sharing, and I'm moving out.
So this should work now. Alex, can you confirm back to me that the slide deck is live? Alex, just a final confirmation, please.
Yes, just wrote in the chat, it is.
Good. So let's get started. What did we prepare for the agenda? Brief intro about Chantis, about the company, and to dive into the current industry problems we are facing. Then the 4 bullet points, as mentioned already in the agenda, in the invitation. First point about GDPR and EPrivacy, get it finally under control. Second point then is how to gain 20 to 40% more and better data. Future-proofed by first-party integration, and last but not least, increase efficiency in performance marketing by up to 15%. We're going to back this into more or less 30 minutes, and then we have 15 minutes planned for a Q&A session. Good. So the intro about Chantis. The project actually has been started in year 2016 when this gentleman, together with 2 more techies, has discovered that the data problems won't go away anymore, and therefore they started getting their hands dirty and started with the project. In year 2019, we had the proof of concept, and then we were just looking for the first investors and started Chantis, the limited entity of Chantis. In total, 5 founders. We are based in Vienna, planning to open offices in Berlin and London this year. And we have right now a staff of 20 people on the ground and more than 40 reference clients. Anything to be added from your side, Thomas?
Oh, no, everything mentioned.
Good. So let's dive into the problem. One of our core statements we are even having on our website is that website data tracking is fundamentally broken. And for those of you who have newsletters in their inbox, I think there is hardly a day where you do not have such statements in there. Especially this year, triggered by Apple and by Google. And there was an announcement from Google, from David Dampkin, where they made clear that first-party data becomes vital and that Google will not be responsible anymore in order to organize third-party data, to have better matching, to enable better targeting out there. So they won't do your job in the future anymore. And therefore, their statement was first-party data becomes vital. First-party data relationship becomes vital. I think most of you guys are aware of Apple, about their initiatives with iOS 14, with ATT, and also what they have built in at the Safari browser. What we have seen in most of our trials going on, how bad the data quality is coming out from Safari users. So, coming to the first agenda point here is about GDPR and EPrivacy, finally under control. Thomas, your point, please.
Yeah, thank you. So now we are focusing the legal situation a little bit deeper, and for that we have to think about on which laws we have to focus. So we have to understand that we have in Europe a 2-step process of how to create new laws, and there is a new directive, which means there is like the EPrivacy, which is hand over to national laws. Like, for example, in German Telekommunikationsgesetze, telecommunication laws. And the next step is a regulation, which means the regulation will be executed directly without being handed over to national law. So, and a regulation is executed like the GDPR. Means if there is a new topic like data protection in the European Union, the first one would be a directive and the second one would be a regulation. So if we want to focus how we can deal with data in future, we have to think about two laws. The one are the national telecommunication laws, and the second one is the GDPR. So both laws have their own topic. The telecommunication laws regards to what is allowed to do in the privacy of a visitor, especially the privacy devices of a visitor. What is allowed to access their read and write data. The GDPR is more or less regard to the what is allowed to do with personal related data. Doesn't matter if there is on which device. So we have to think about on both laws to know what we have, what we are allowed to do. A telecommunication law, like I told you before, it's about what are you allowed to extract on a personal device, what is allowed to write or to store on personal device. Depends on all data, not just on personal related data. And you have two possibilities that you're allowed to do something at these devices. The first one is that it is technically required because of the user expectation. Means that if anything you want to do is technically required and you think there is a user expectation for that, then you're allowed to do without the consent. The second one is the consent. So if you have a consent from the user, then obviously you're allowed to do it. But the very important thing for you guys is what we are allowed to think is the user expectation. And there are some guidelines out there. It's the working website, and it's, for example, e-commerce. Very important, it's not marketing, and it's not personalization. So even if we try to argument in that direction that the user may expect good marketing or may expect a good personalization, in point of view of the legal situation, it's not the expectation of the user to get a marketing or personalization. So it's not technically required. And we're not allowed to do things on the personal device of a visitor because of marketing or personalization. That means, regarding to telecommunication law, the only reason why we are allowed to do these things is because we have the consent of the user. So that means if we want to write something to the device of a user, like for example a cookie, or we want to read data because, for example, we want to track them, regards to marketing and personalization, then we need the consent of the user. That's step one. Step two, GDPR. There are different justifications regards to GDPR, why we are allowed to do something with personal related data. The first one, or there are more justifications, but I think these three will be important for you guys. The first one is the fulfillment of a contract. So if you have a contract with the visitor and you need the personal related data to fulfillment the contract, then you're allowed to store the data, to proceed the data, to track the data. The second one is the legitimate interest. So if you have interest which is higher than the interest of the visitor to data protection, then obviously you're allowed to track, store, and proceed the data. And the third one is the consent. If you have the consent of the visitor, then obviously you're allowed to do it, but very important, you have to have the consent for a certain purpose. And you are not allowed to change the purpose after you get the consent. So you have to inform the user, I'm getting data from you because of that and that purpose. And after that, you're not allowed to change the purpose in order to store or proceed the data. A second very important point are the articles 44 to 49, which tells us what we are allowed to do with data, to send the data to third-party countries. And the GDPR is very clear on that point. We have certain reasons why we are allowed to share data with third-party countries. The first one, the European Union, the Commission of the European Union can make decisions where they say us a certain country has the same level of data protection than the European Union. To say it clear, there is no such decision for the USA. A second point why we can share these data with a third-party country can be a bilateral agreement, like, for example, Safe Harbor or Privacy Shield. I think everybody of you guys heard about it. Actually, we do not have such an agreement between the European Union and between the USA. And why we do not have? Because of Schrems. Schrems 1, we know in 2015, which attacks the Safe Harbor agreement, and Schrems 2, 2020, which attacks the Privacy Shield. And so actually we do not have such an agreement between European Union and the USA. The third point are standard contract clauses. So every company can try to find a way within a company from a third-party country how they can create such a level of data protection. And here it is very clear because the European Union itself told us that it's not the same level. So the question is how a company could come to the result that it is the same level. So in our point of view, there is actually no reason why we are allowed to track these data to a third-party country like USA, especially USA. So if we have a quick check for certain tools to realize if there is a way to track it, and if yes, what we're gonna do for it. If we think about Google Analytics, if Google Analytics wants to store a cookie, yes. What is the purpose? Maybe statistics, maybe marketing. Are there any personal related data? Yes, at least the IP address. Do we want to send data to the USA? Yes. Is there any GDPR justification which is not consent? For example, contract or interests? No, not really. Means in order to telecommunication law, we need the consent because we want to store and to read certain data out of the privacy device of the visitor. And regarding to GDPR, there is actually no way that we can track it because Google Analytics, unfortunately, is an USA company. So actually, we're not allowed to send data to Google Analytics. There is another very good example. Some days ago, some guys of you may read it, MailChimp had the same issue. We're not allowed, and there is now a court decision, we're not allowed to send any data even to MailChimp. It's regard to all the US tools out there. Let's have a second example, which is not a US tool. Matomo, for example, are they store cookies? Yes. Purpose is statistic. Are they using person-related data? Yes, of course. No send data to the USA and no other justification than consent, which means in order of telecommunication law, we need the consent, it's clear now. But now the new situation is GDPR, and because we're sending the data not to USA, we need a consent, but it's possible to track data to Matomo. So what we are doing with Chantis is that we are right in the middle between the browser of the visitor and between, for example, Google Analytics, which is storing data in the USA. And because of that, we can change, for example, the IP address of the user to an IP address of the server. So we can anonymize the data before we're sending the data over the sea to the Google Analytics stores. That means we have an interest of getting this data regarding to GDPR. We are, by ourselves, we are setting some cookies in the browser of the visitor. So we need a consent on our side regarding to telecommunication law. But now with the consent, it is okay to send the data to even Google Analytics, MailChimp, and you name it, all the US tools out there, because we're working with anonymized data. So GDPR has no effect here. And we're working server-based, so we just need the consent because we're storing a cookie, but we do not need the consent to send the data to a US company. By the way, we're doing that one not just with Google Analytics, but with many, many tools out there. Many of them are based in the USA. So with Chantis, even regarding to GDPR and the telecommunication laws in Europe, because we are based in Europe, it's allowed to send the data over us, with us, to the US market, like MailChimp, like Google Analytics, Facebook, you name it. Klaus, over to you. If we are allowed to send the data now to US, why do we think that we have more data than we have it before?
Happy to answer that. Just one question to you, Thomas. Do we have any limitations for sending data to more pixels in the US? How many pixels would we be able to support?
Every pixel, because we have a totally unique technology, as you know, Klaus, but good question. So there are no limitations. We can provide this technology to every pixel out there.
Okay, so no API documentation needed, no projects. Cool. So why do we believe we gain more data with Chantis? Let me first share with you how a customer journey looks like. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, but just to remind you, in this case, Peter F., who just purchased something on your website today, what brought him to your website? Probably in this case, what we see is it was a display ad, then something on social media with Facebook. He made a Google search and then a direct entry to your website. And then on today, he ordered something on your website. That's actually super valuable insight, because that's how your media budget performs. And if you look to your Google Analytics, to your Matomo, to your Bibic, to your WebTrack, whatsoever, you're supposed to see plenty of customer journeys. And whenever we approach a client, that's what they tell us, that they believe, well, but we already have the data. But whenever we are able to make a trial with them, which by the way is a free trial, we are able to bring additional data points to the customer journey. In the first case with a Microsoft Edge browser, it was, for example, an ad blocker. With the Safari browser, they are using intelligent tracking prevention. They are just cutting the customer journey into single sessions, not mapping to the same user, which makes it hard to get the full customer journey with Safari users. Whatever takes longer than 24 hours is considered as a new user and not anymore the same user. And I think I do not know a lot of e-commerce companies which always can expect a conversion within 24 hours. So same with Chrome. There mainly the high percentage of ad blockers is causing the deviation. And then Firefox, which we have seen is actually causing the worst data quality deviation. They call it enhanced tracking prevention. And there you almost lose significantly more than 50% of the data. So with this complete picture, I think it becomes super clear how much data you lose. And then in a different way of presenting the data, as our clients at the beginning believe they have 100% of the data, it's simple to explain to them the ad blockers are not just blocking the ads, but they're also blocking the data stream. So you're not seeing this visitor, you're not seeing the page view if the ad blocker was on, which leads to a lot of broken customer journeys. And then if you deduct the market share of the browsers from Safari and from Firefox and some of the Edge browsers already, you immediately get in the range of 40% or more of data you lose. And your actionable data you can base your decisions on gets in the range of 50–55%. And that's something we do not believe is sufficient for a proper data-driven company. So with Chantis, we're able to get back 100% of the customer data. A different way of presenting the data is the effects which destroy the data quality based on also including the consent, which there are several statistics out there, which in this case we assume cost you 20% of the data points, then the ad blockers, and then ITP, ETP. And with Chantis, we're able to bring back ITP, ETP, and ad blockers. And we even have some technology, as already pointed out by Thomas, because it's easier for us to get the consent for a first-party cookie, because this is only based on EPrivacy Telecommunication Act, that we even can improve the consent share, the percentage for our clients. So this should make pretty clear how much more data you can get back. And if you multiply the ad blocker times the ITP, ETP loss, we have several clients out there where we can prove that they get 60 to 70% more and better data. So, but how do we get this in place? We need first-party integration, looks like. Thomas, how do we do that? How can we make sure that it's future-proof?
Yeah, currently we have a change here with which data we want to work in the future from third-party data to first-party data. But let's have a look how we do our job today. Actually, we are tracking data from the visitor of the browser to the tools like Google Analytics, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. And Klaus mentioned some of these problems like ad blockers, like ETP. Therefore, we have currently, and even in the past few years, really garbage data we are tracking to these tools. But actually, it's not a big problem, because there are other guys in this system who helps that with add some data to the system, like ad networks, advertiser networks, or social media networks. And because of a technology I will explain to you, they can add some data to your data. And so at the end in the system, we have good enough data to work, for example, for retargeting or such things. But we have to think about on which technology this addition of data is based, and it's third-party cookies. So all the guys out there like Google, like Facebook, like LinkedIn, who helps with their data to make our data better, our first-party data, are based on third-party cookies. So we have to have a look on which browser is supporting third-party cookies, and we have a little bit of future look how here. Unfortunately, no browser is supporting third-party cookies in 6 or 8 months. So we are losing the technology, and you guys know it because the media are full with it, that we are losing the technology third-party cookies. What does it mean for our situation? We have currently still the situation that these guys out there like Facebook and Google are helping with additional data or tracking to the system. But without third-party cookies, we're losing the social media data, we're losing even the advertiser network data. So at the end, it's about our data that we have to send to these advertising networks, which will make the difference between me and my neighbor, how good the data can be used on the advertising network. Which means if I send garbage data to the systems, I will get back garbage advertising possibilities. So therefore, it is so important that you guys out there really has a full control over your first-party data, and these data are really correct. Correct means regarding to the legal situation and regarding to the statistic situation. So not just losing 50% of the data because of browsers, ad blockers, ITP, and are not sure because of legal situation which data I'm allowed to track and which data I'm not allowed to track. So you must get back the fully control over your first-party data and track it to all that systems, because in future that is the only way these systems can work for you. And now the last question, last but not least, is how do we get an efficiency increase up to 50% regarding to our performance marketing? Because now we know what we have to do in order for the legal situation. We know what is the problem for statistic. And now the last question is, what can we do with this better data? Klaus.
So many reasons to have better data. I mean, we started with the legal perspective, and that's more an insurance business case. I mean, most of you guys know the penalty, the fine is 4% of your annual revenue. So that already should be pretty persuasive towards your top management, but it's an insurance case. So what's the clear return of investment case here? And for example, the Chantis technology starts from 500 euro per month. So first of all, we have to make sure that our clients do understand that they can earn the money at least back. And therefore, we have prepared one slide to explain to you guys how we can help to improve media efficiency by 10 to 15%. So let's start with the misleading attribution data. I've shown to you beforehand a slide where you can see that we can make several additional touch points visible, which makes clear that the assisted attributions are not lost anymore. Therefore, the quite often cheaper clicks are considered in the attribution, and therefore this helps to improve your media mix, your media spend out there. Immediate effect is on your bidding strategy. And let's not forget that not many guys out there are doing a manual bidding strategy. So we're talking a lot about algorithms who decide based on data. But garbage in, garbage out, if you feed the wrong data, how could they find the perfect bidding strategy for your products, for your portfolio? So with the additional data and with the full attribution, you also will be able to have a better bidding strategy, which means more top one positions at even lower costs at the end of the day, which brings more revenue. Then, if you have all your first-party data under control, you're even able to report the lookalike audiences in a significantly better way. Sometimes they're called lookalike, sometimes they're called similar user audiences, but you can't hand this over to the networks that you'd like to have more of these clients and less of the other ones. Which brings us to the tricky point of remarketing lists. Well, we already addressed it, that remarketing lists are going away, but as long as they are still available on Google Chrome, of course, it's essential for us that we support it, because remarketing contributes to a significant return of investment in most of the companies out there. So the good news here is that with our hybrid tracking approach, we are even able to maintain. We're not able to improve the situation, but at least to maintain the remarketing situation as of today. Point number 5 is better insights on A/B tests. If you lose 40% of data in your A/B tests, you can assume that your A/B tests are also not super reliable and that you're losing significant segments out there where your conversion rate sucks. And if you have then 100% of the data back, also your A/B testing will bring better results, which will help really to improve the conversion rates out there. And last but not least, for most of our clients, and I assume the same will be true for your website, we see on average between 20 and 25 pixels live. So it starts from 7, 8, 9 pixels up to 55 pixels. And if we can if we can decrease the amount of pixels running in a website, of course, the loading of the website improves, the page speed improves, and therefore the ranking is improving, and the organic traffic will ultimately also improve. So those 6 points are supposed to explain to you how we are able to improve media efficiency by 10 to 15%, which is actually confirmed by our clients out there. And we are right now writing some case stories in order to share this information also with the market out there. So we have pretty much covered the context, the main agenda of this webinar. So handing back to you, Alex, to get into the Q&A session.
Yes. Many thanks for that great insight. Personally, I think that was awesome, and I really learned very much during the last 30 minutes. And we already have some questions. I'm switching to the questions mode and then hand back to you guys again. And please, dear audience, feel free, if you still have questions or is something coming to your mind during the answers, then please type in and use this possibility to ask Klaus and Thomas about your questions and your thoughts you have.
So, shall I click on the questions, Alex, or will you do that?
I'm doing it. It will not work. Maybe you can try it also.
But we can start answering the questions. Why you try to get back control over technology?
Yes.
Scroll a little bit on the right side.
So the first one was about statistics. Let's see. So I think it's now visible from Bilal Yassin. I'm probably wrong in pronouncing your name, but at least I think we're able to answer your question correctly. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's correct. Unfortunately, it's clear now that the IP address is a personal related data. And so we are not allowed to track the IP address over the front end directly to the US. Because we are not doing that, we are sending the IP address to our server, which is based in the European Union, and we're a European Union-based company. We are allowed to get this IP address, and we are sending the data then to Google Analytics, which means with our IP address of the server. So that's not a problem. Yeah, that's correct. With Chantis, you can send this data to Google Analytics without any risky situation regarding to the legal situation. Good question from Patrick. What do you mean by no APIs necessary? Because when we built the product, we are a little bit afraid of dependency to the big guys out there. So if you, from a technical perspective, if you're sending data and using an API, then you have a dependency to that API. What we did is that we have created totally new technology. We have a browser-based technology on the server. So we are using the same tracking technology like we would use on the front end, but we're using it just on the back end. So we are just doing a normal JavaScript tracking, but instead of doing it on the front end, we're doing it on the back end. So that's the reason why we do not need any APIs, and that's the reason why we can provide this technology to all the pixels out there, because all the pixels out there have already a technology how to send data from the front end, and we are using exactly that technology just on the server to send the data to all these pixels. A second question by Patrick. Do you want to answer? Yes. Should I?
Yes. Yeah. Well, as a former Googler, of course, Google is an awesome company. They have also a great technology out there, and they have a super market share out there. What we must not forget is that here we are talking about the regulated market. And when I learned something at Google, we were always afraid of going into regulated markets. And therefore, Google is somehow trying to solve the problem without getting involved themselves. And therefore, it's certainly not a managed service they can provide to you guys. And then they actually force you to bring the data directly into the Google Cloud, which is, again, already an issue with the US Cloud Act. So therefore, for several reasons, it's tricky to get a similar solution than with Chantis, with Google technology. You may find lots of experts, or not lots, you may find some experts out there who can build something for you and may want to run it, but that's certainly not a managed service like with Chantis, where we call it software as a service at your fingertip. Did I forget anything about that?
No, I think everything mentioned.
Good. So next question.
I think I will take that one. It's a deeper technical question. Michael, thank you for that question. I tried to answer it quickly. Totally open to discuss it afterwards. Unfortunately, that's not true. I know that's the story we told even for 5 years ago. If a pixel is loaded asynchronous, then this not affect the page speed regarding to SEO. Browsers are loading external resources by building packages of 4 or 5 resources. So it means if the Chrome, for example, loads 5 or 4 resources, even asynchronous, then the Chrome is waiting until these 4 or 5 resources are loaded until the Chrome wants to access the new package of 4 or 5 resources. That is the point 1. Point 2 is that even if the resources are loaded, the problem is that even the Chrome browser needs RAM and CPU to process the data, because all the things which are loaded are not like in the earlier days, just static pixels. Actually, we are loading all the time JavaScript libraries, and the JavaScript libraries must be executed. And this slows down the website. And regarding to SEO, there are different measurements of how fast a website is. So we have to take a deeper look here why tracking pixels are slowed down a website regarding to SEO. I can promise you that's a fact. Over the last 10 years, we have many measures about that fact, but open to discuss it afterwards.
And I think also to mention that most of the IT departments are pretty relieved if they can get rid of these third-party JavaScripts and replace it with one JavaScript. So it also has significant security implications. So what's the base of Chantis price? Well, we could do that, Michael. We never did a guarantee because it always depends on the setups where we need to first get an idea. But especially with the ITP and ad blocker implication, in total, I'm more than happy to guarantee that to you, that you have more and better data of 40% plus. What's the base of the Chantis pricing? It scales based on number of sessions and number of domains in use. And therefore, it starts from 500 euro per month. And then we need to have a look into your sessions. So with 50,000 sessions, it's a starter package, one domain, and then it just depends on how much more. It's, of course, a degressive pricing. And what we have seen that the return of investment is always a multiple of 10. So whatever we cost based on the media efficiency, they get 10x back.
Just one additional point to that question. I totally understand the question about guarantee and the numbers, and of course we can do that. But Michael, maybe better than the guarantee is you can see it with your own eyes, because what we're doing is we're offering a trial, a free trial, no costs on your side, so you can see these numbers with your own eyes before you're signing any contract.
There is a final slide for you, Michael. Just pay attention. We'll share an email address how to get to a free trial. So, Ingo.
Yeah, we did already a little bit of comparison between Google server-side tracking and between our solution. One different, like Klaus mentioned, was that we are totally Europe-based, which means it's a huge difference regarding to the legal situation. Maybe a second thing is that we really take care about the data capture. If you use our product, Ingo, you will see that we really care about which data are tracked, how can we track it easily, and how can we proceed it through the system. For example, we are offering a data enrichment system on our side. So if data are tracked to our system, you can enrich them easily on the server with certain third-party data providers before you track them to the different data receiver out there, like Google Analytics and Facebook. I think we can go here to a deeper mode in a 4-to-1 call. But for now, the comparison is, on the one hand, European-based technology. On the one hand, really care about data capture and not just the server-side tracking.
And as we have pointed out, we do not need APIs to forward data to other pixels, so we are able to stream the data. One of our USPs is what we call a twin server, so we are twinning a session, and as we twin a session, it's then easier to forward a stream to any endpoint out there, which is something at least according to our know-how with the Google server-side tag manager, you can connect the Google universe, but for example, not Facebook, which is a super important player on the market. So thanks for your question, Joe. How does the integration look like? First of all, what we need is a so-called A record to be first party, and you need to implement the Chantis JavaScript native on your website. Then we're giving to you some text codes, text snippets for the data protection information, and therefore we can run then a trial where you can compare the data left and right hand side. And then for the full integration, for the full setup, we're having a Chantis Tag Manager where we're going to hand over this interface to our clients that they can do the tagging by themselves in order to connect all the pixels out there they want to get connected to. Anything to be added from your side?
Yes, just very important information for the tracking guys out there. If your website is already tagged, for example, with a data layer by Google Tag Manager, or for example, a Google Analytics native integration, then we can bridge that implementation. So if you have a standard tagging in your website, there is no need to re-tag the website. That was very important for many of our customers because it was huge resources needed otherwise if you re-tag a website. So we can read the data layer, we can read the Google Analytics native integration if there is one on your website, and can bridge it automatically to the Chantis data we need to track to the Chantis server.
So thanks for this question. It just took us some time to read through it.
Yes, that's true. We're using subdomains of your website, of your domain, to set these cookies from the server. That is one part of the solution, but as you read the documents, how browsers like Safari, for example, tries to realize what is a tracker and what is not a tracker, it's not just because the domain. There are some locally machine learning units built in the Safari browser, for example, or in the Brave browser, which tries to realize what is a tracker and what not. And if you have a tracking mechanism on your site, even you can affect it by ITP, even there is a private first-party cookie. So there is more technology out there why we are not affected by ITP, ETP with the Chantis universe, not because just setting cookies over the first-party domain, but you're right, the first-party domain, the subdomain of the first-party domain is one part of the solution. And how will changes be implemented? Like Klaus mentioned, is there is one A record needed on your DNS setup, and then we are able to track and set cookies via the subdomain on your first-party domain.
I really like this amount of questions coming in.
It's good.
Thanks for that. Makes much more fun than just presenting slides. So
I think that one is answered already.
So it's turnkey ready. It doesn't need any hard work on your side. It's a matter of a few hours max on your side. Everything else is done in our cloud, runs fully on Kubernetes, so highly scalable for you.
How does it work for mobile apps? Excellent question. Thank you for that. There are more technology out there how you can build your mobile apps today. If you're using hybrid technology, which means it's based on the browser, your mobile app, then it works exactly the same way than in the normal browser web world. You can set up the Chantis snippet and the tracking will work even from a mobile app. If you use a native app, then there is not really an urgent reason why you should switch, because these problems we mentioned here in the webinar is more related to the web applications or to the web, which is based on browser technology. So we're working currently on an SDK for mobile native apps, but obviously it's not that urgent for us because there is not that urgent need out there on the market because the problems are more focused to the browser on the web world.
Well, thanks for that question, Gernot. of course, we factored that into all our architecture building and so on. And I think there are plenty of other solutions out there who already have found a way around it. So we will not use just one IP address. I think that's clear.
Yeah, I think there are two answers to that question. The one is the more technical answer, which means yes, we realized that there is a risk. We realized it early enough in the year 2017 that there is a risk that we are blocked by our IP. Therefore, we're using, like MailChimp, for example, just a rotating IP address system, which means there is a huge monitoring out there when we're blocked and when not. And if we are blocked and if a certain IP address is blocked, then we're just skip this IP address and use another one. But the second way of answering that question is the more business way. The question is, and we had some meeting with Google. Google, obviously, they love us because what happened out there is if the customers, if the companies is sending better data via Chantis to the Google universe, then even the marketing works better there. And that is a basic wish of Google. So we are not an enemy of Google. We're just a friend of Google. So actually, there is no reason why we get blocked. But we are prepared from a technical perspective, but on the business perspective, there is no reason because we're not an enemy for Google.
So in other terms, they need the fuel and we bring the fuel to them. So one more question.
Obviously, you answered the question with the second part of the question. Of course, you can do it by yourself. And of course, there are certain ebooks. One is written or sponsored by Chantis, how you can do it by yourself. We just did a product out of it. It's very hard to maintain all these technical requirements out there. Obviously, you can go to AWS, for example, to Google Cloud or to Microsoft Azure, set up here 100 to 200 virtual servers to really can handle all the traffic stuff which is coming to the servers, and you can program it by yourself, obviously. But in our point of view, it's really hard. I have some agency background in the past few years, and let me tell you, we tried it that way to do it individual for one or two customers, and we totally failed because the project were so huge and so many resources needed. So that was the reason in 2016 why we wanted to build a product out of this requirement, because it was not able for us to do it individually per company or per customer.
And that's exactly a proof point, which just undermines what I said at the beginning, that we are acting here in a regulated space. And for Google, it's super tricky to offer you the complete service in a regulated space, because they have a lot of enemies out there with local governments and so on. So Google will not move into this space because they are too much afraid of getting sued. Very good question. Sometimes we are responsible for data capture, and we stream the data to any tool you have in your marketing stack right now, which means we do not ask you to substitute any tool with our tool. We are just getting in addition to the marketing stack. And that's also why certain big players love our technology so much, because we are a standalone solution. You do not have to switch your entire suite to us. So to answer the question, we are not a reporting tool. We just stream the data to wherever you want to visualize the data. And of course, you can extract the raw data for your data scientists. So those are the two output ways how you can use it in real time.
Maybe just another point of view to answer that question. And I worked the past 10 years as an analytics guy. And come on, guys, everybody of us really loves Google Analytics in order to make reports. It's an easy handling tool. So our goal was not to replace Google Analytics, because all of us loves to work with Google Analytics. The problem we are focusing is that we're pushing the wrong data to these tools we are loving. And it doesn't matter if you're using Google Analytics, if you're using Matomo, WebTrack, eTracker. We love all these tools, so we do not want to change them. But the real change which is necessary is to push the right data to these tools so that you can work with the tool you want and the right data.
Good. Alex, what does the counter say?
I think we are really on time, and I think you have covered all the questions. And for me, it was still interesting. As I said before, I'm always learning and learning and learning. Also with that great questions from the audience. Yes, and I think you have one more chart to show to the audience. And yeah, so please do that. And from my side, I say many thanks. It was my pleasure hosting the very, very interesting webinar with an awesome solution of Chantis. And please now say your thanks, Klaus and Thomas.
So thanks, Alex. I'm just trying to switch back to that. That's always a little bit tricky for me. Let's see. Give me a sec. Chrome tab, just a sec. Yes. So here, just as a wrap up, we already pointed it out. We do offer a free trial where we help with the setup. It's something which takes an hour on your side. Then we also help with the data analysis. And then you're supposed to make a decision towards a full setup. If you're interested in a free trial, please drop us an email at webinar@chantis.com, and we will get back to you ASAP just to work on making it real, that you can see how much more data you will have available. So thank you very much for paying so much attention, and I hope to see you soon in a one-on-one video call. So all the best in the meantime. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Alex, are you stopping?